President of the Economic Club of Canada, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our luncheon event today. Before we begin, we are reminded and we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory and home of Indigenous people, the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewas, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, lands steeped in a rich history dating back many generations. The purpose of our acknowledgement today is to show our gratitude and our respect for their contributions and to recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Toronto. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Economic Club, we are Canada's national podium of record and the only nonpartisan national public policy platform that unites leaders, experts, and innovators from different sectors to discuss and address key issues shaping the future of our country. Our foundation is firmly Canadian, yet our influence spans well beyond our borders. Our commitment to fostering collaboration, promoting thoughtful debate, and encouraging action continues to drive all of the work that we do. We are so thrilled to have partnered with the Canadian Nuclear Isotopes Council for today's event, Isotopes for Hope, Canada's 2030 Promise. So a big thank you to our presenting sponsors today, Bruce Power and Laurentis Energy Partners. Thank you to our supporting sponsors, CanDo and Novartis. We know that luncheons like this aren't possible without your generous support, so let's give them a warm round of applause. Now, please help me welcome Leslie McWilliams, President and CEO of Laurentis Energy Partners, to deliver her opening remarks and get things going. Let's give Leslie a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking the Canadian Economic Club for hosting today's event and for bringing so many leaders together here in one room. It is for me a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to provide some opening remarks on a very important topic and conversation that I think reflects one of the best attributes about Canada: our scientific leadership, our collaborative spirit, and our commitment to improving health in people in Canada and around the world. And for nearly a century, Canada has been a pioneer in nuclear isotope development. From our earliest days of nuclear research, we have embraced the belief that science and innovation can change lives. And today that belief continues to shape a world-class ecosystem that leads the way in breakthroughs for diagnosing and treating cancer. And Ontario, in particular, is home to one of the most complete and capable isotope value chains globally. We have advanced reactor technology, specialized process and manufacturing capability, a robust logistics network, and an exceptional clinical and research community. And this alignment between industry, healthcare, government, and academia creates the environment where innovation transforms from concept to clinic, rooted in safety, innovation, reliability, and quality. And at Laurentis Energy Partners, we're proud to play a critical role in that landscape. At Ontario Power Generation's Darlington Nuclear Generating Station, our teams are producing essential isotopes such as lutetium-177, yttrium-90, molybdenum-99 that support life-saving cancer therapies and diagnostic imaging around the world. And it's the work that I think all Canadians should feel proud of. We are continuing to build for the future. Pending regulatory approvals, Laurentis Energy Partners is preparing to double our isotope capability through the installation of a second target delivery system in Darlington's Unit 3. And this investment will expand capacity, strengthen supply security, and position Canada to meet growing global demands. And this effort is part of a broader national opportunity, with Canada poised to double its overall isotope production by 2030. Now, that growth isn't just about scale, it's also about impact. It means more patients benefiting from cutting-edge therapies, more resilient supply chains for emerging treatments, and a stronger platform for that next generation of nuclear medicine. But none of that progress happens in isolation. The strength of Canada's isotope sector is built on partnership and a shared purpose. And I'd like to acknowledge the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council for the leadership in elevating Canada's role in the world stage and strengthening collaboration across the value chain. And ultimately, this is also about people. People in terms of medical and doctors having new equipment, for the researchers having new developments, and for families and patients, which perhaps becomes the most meaningful of all, is that it gives people, patients, and families hope. Hope for an earlier diagnosis, hope for a more precise treatment, and hope for a better outcome. And together, we all have that opportunity to bring that hope to reality. And so I do want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you for being here, for your leadership, for your dedications, and for your contributions to improving our medical isotope community. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Jenna Suds, who is a Member of Parliament from Canada. Welcome, Jenna.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to join you here this afternoon. My name's Jenna Suds. As was said, I have the honor of serving as the Member of Parliament for Canada, a suburb of Ottawa, but perhaps more famously known as the home of Nordion and BWXT. Hence, through their efforts, their work that they do in my community, I have grown over, I'm going to say, the last decade to become closer with the folks in those establishments and really come to have an appreciation and an understanding of the importance of the work that they do and that I know many of you in this room do each and every day. So a sincere thanks for the invitation. Thank you to the Economic Club of Canada for hosting us here today for an important conversation. I think that we can all agree in this room the importance over many, many decades now of the work that happens throughout this country when it comes to medical isotopes. Canada has been a pioneer in this field. We've earned global trust through our excellence in the nuclear sector, whether that be through our research reactors and cyclotrons, our hospitals that are leading in nuclear medicine, and our world-class researchers and innovators. But this leadership is not just technical. It's not just the technical skills. It's also deeply human. And I say that because it has meant more accurate and earlier diagnostics, more targeted cancer therapies, and more importantly, more memories for families, more time, more hope for patients as they deal with disease. So today, the world, frankly, is at a turning point. Demand for medical isotopes, especially therapeutic isotopes, is growing faster than the supply. Hospitals around the world face shortages, patients are facing delays in treatment, and health systems are seeking stable, reliable, long-term suppliers. And this is where I truly believe that Canadian leadership matters. Isotopes for Hope, Canada 2030 promise, from my view, is a bold an ambitious and achievable commitment, one that positions our country to help meet that global demand while strengthening our own domestic health system at the same time. It's a commitment to double our isotope production by 2030, expand our manufacturing and processing capabilities, invest in critical infrastructure, and ensure that we can deliver these life-saving isotopes to patients when and where they need it. What makes this work possible is Canada's unique model, a collaborative ecosystem where industry, representative of this room, frankly, industry, academia, hospitals, provincial, federal partners all work together. The federal government has been proud to support this sector and to help to accelerate the momentum that we're feeling. One of the most significant investments is the $35 million Strategic Innovation Fund that contributed to the launch and expansion of the Canadian medical isotope ecosystem, jointly led by the Centre for Probe Development and Commercialization and Triumph Innovations. So this investment is strengthening every part of the value chain. It supports expanded isotope production capacity, the development of next-generation radiopharmaceuticals, early-stage clinical research, commercialized pathways for Canadian innovations, and enhanced supply chain resiliency and redundancy. This investment facilitates national collaboration, which I think is key to the path forward for our country, bringing together partners from all corners of the country to advance the sector. Most recently, Budget 2025, I think, builds on this strategic momentum and measures that strengthen our capacity for innovation, production, and commercialization. For this room, perhaps one of the most significant and relevant commitments recently was the establishment of the Major Projects Office, which clearly has a mandate to support and enable major nuclear projects across this country, and has explicitly listed the Darlington New Nuclear SMR as a project to explore. This is a major step forward in the sector. Of course, the budget also includes measures around investment tax credits. James and I were speaking about that earlier. Enhanced scientific and research incentives to help reduce R&D cost, productivity super deduction, which really enables an acceleration of expensing of equipment and technologies. Includes support for nuclear infrastructure projects that strengthen the backbone of Canada's isotope production. Also includes some really interesting opportunities around the Health Infrastructure Fund, a new investment or fund that we've put forward in this budget, which is really intended to help modernize hospitals and has the potential to expand access to advanced diagnostics and therapeutic facilities. So switching gears from budget, the 2030 promise, I think, is more than just a commitment. It is a vision of a healthier future powered by Canadian innovation, collaboration, and leadership. And it ensures that Canadian patients receive the highest standard of care while strengthening Canada's global reputation as a reliable supplier in a critical and, I'd suggest, a rapidly expanding field. I think as we look ahead, one thing is very clear, and I hope it is clear to all of you as it is to me. The federal government recognizes the essential importance of medical isotopes and the essential importance of this for our health sector, for our economy, but also for our role on the world stage. We know that realizing the full potential of the sector requires continued partnership together. And that is why we're committed to continuing the work, to working closely with industry, with researchers, with provinces, and the entire ecosystem to help chart the path forward that will guide Canada's future when it comes to medical isotopes. Together, we will build stronger supply chains, accelerate scientific breakthroughs, and ensure that Canada continues to lead the world, not only in producing medical isotopes, but in delivering hope to the patients that need them. So thank you very much. I have the honor now to introduce a leader who I don't think needs an introduction in this room. However, I have the honor of introducing James Skongak, Chair of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. I believe a tireless advocate for Canadian leadership in the sector. Please join me in welcoming James.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. I have something embarrassing I need to admit to, and the AV technicians at the back will appreciate what I'm. Can you hear me? Okay. Will appreciate what I'm going to say is they insisted I have a handheld mic this time, and the reason was because the last time I presented in this room, the program was running late. I was mic'd up as a panelist, and I ended up running to the washroom before I was on the panel. And even though everybody in the room didn't hear what was going on in the washroom, the AV did. So I guess they figured that if they gave me this, there's no way I'm going to walk into the washroom with this. So anyway, thank you very much for making this dummy proof to not take a microphone into the washroom. So anyway, it's embarrassing, but I've just shared it all with you, so now I'm not going to ever get away with it again. So firstly, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much to all of you for supporting this important cause. We're really here for two reasons today. And you're going to hear from other speakers on our panel. There's a few items on behalf of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council I want to share with everybody. But the first reason why we're here is what really Jenna and Leslie talked about. And that is that regardless of who you are, where you live, what job you're in, what community you're a part of, 40% of us in this room will get cancer in our lives. 40%. So if I drew a line down the middle of this room, 40% to my right will get cancer in your life. 100% of us, every single one of us in this room, will be impacted by cancer. If it's not ourselves, it's our loved ones, it's our family members, our neighbors, our colleagues. Cancer is something that impacts us all. I have the privilege of chairing an organization. It's a not-for-profit group called the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario. And by its name, it's really focused on helping kids and families with cancer across Ontario. And one of the things that I have learned as the chair of POGO, my wife's a cancer survivor, is that once somebody is impacted by cancer, whether it's themselves or a family member, it's something that lives with them for the rest of their life, forever. And that's just not a medical condition. It's actually a mental health component. Cancer is so challenging for people. And so why are we all here? Well, we're here, and you're going to hear from people like some physicians and experts in the health field in a few minutes, is our job is to make sure, as Canadians, I'll come to that point in a second, that when a family receives that devastating news, that the frontline healthcare professionals that are there delivering that news, can you imagine what that would be like? And you've had to live that they have the best tools at their disposal to help people when they're at their lowest. That's why we're here. Now, isotopes are not a solve-all for everything to do with cancer. They're not. But they are an absolutely critical tool in the toolbox. So frontline healthcare professionals have the diagnostic capabilities, the therapeutic capabilities, or what you're going to hear from Rebecca is the theranostic capabilities. I call that a heat-seeking missile. It both finds and attacks the cancer. But also all of the supplies, all of the materials that are used in a hospital, sterilized by our friends at Nordion, which Jenna talked about, our job is really about giving those frontline healthcare professionals the best tools in the toolbox to do the things that they do. And that's a pretty profound responsibility. And I guarantee you that you have been touched by this isotope for hope area of our Canadian, what I'll call Canadian greatness, more than you'll ever realize. So that's the first reason why we're here. And we're going to talk more about how do we build on that. The second reason why we're here is because we're proud Canadians. And I don't need to talk about Donald Trump to say that this has been an incredibly unique period in Canada's history. And I could talk about a lot of the challenges we have, and I'm not going to do that. But what I think has happened, and we were talking about this at lunch, I think what has happened for all of us in 2025 is all of us have had the opportunity to reflect probably deeper than we had in previous years about what it means to be Canadian. I've never seen more Canadian flags out on Canada Day than I saw on July 1st of this year. Never. I've never seen people so proud to stand up at an OHL or an NHL game or the Toronto Blue Jays World Series being so proud of their country. So it's really, 2025, while it's been tough, it's also been a blessing in disguise in the sense that it's really made us reflect. So as we reflect as Canadians, what are the things that we value and that are important to us and that we want to recommit ourselves to? I would submit that isotopes are part of that. We have capabilities, as Leslie, I think, really described very, very well. We have capabilities here in Canada that others don't. And if we as Canadians do not step up to the plate, those frontline healthcare professionals who are counting on us will not have what they need to do their jobs. And we all know what that means. So that's really, from my perspective, why we're here. And it's very, very important. It's not just another policy file or pitch. It's really that fundamental. I want to start, I could actually spend all my time with a thank you, but there's a number of people that I want to recognize. You know, we formed the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council in 2018. I see many of the people who were our original founding group. And look at where we are today. And it's not really about the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. It's really about what the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council represents for Canada, how we have made this a national priority. But we wouldn't be where we are without some very special people. And you know, I love to thank people, but I could actually ask everybody in this room to stand up because I think all of you in your own way have made a special impact. But in order, there's a few people I specifically want to recognize. The first is, and it was very appropriate that it was that it was mentioned, is we have leadership here from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, former Councillor Theron Solomon, and Councillor Lester Anaqua. Could you please stand up? Let's give these leaders a round of applause. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation was the first First Nations community in Canada to join the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. With my Bruce Power hat on, they are our partners along with Isogen, and they have been leaders in this space. I also see a number of municipal elected officials in the room. If you are a municipal elected official, could you please stand up and be recognized? I see the Mayor of Goderich, the Mayor of Owen Sound. Let's give these folks a round of applause. Both Trevor and Ian, because it was very clear up here, and you'll see later the support that we have from the federal government. We'll play a video later from Minister Lecce, but we've had incredibly strong support in communities, not just communities in Grey Bruce and Huron counties, but down in the Durham region, communities across Canada, because people at the community level understand the importance of the work that we are all advancing together. There's two individuals I was not going to recognize because I didn't know if I would actually see them here, but I see Bill Walker and Todd Smith. If they could please stand up, give them a round of applause. They've been out of elected politics, so they're not used to rounds of applause anymore. But Bill Walker was actually the member of provincial parliament back in 2001. I'm losing track of time, Bill. 2021, that introduced a motion in the Ontario legislature that was unanimously approved by all parties in the legislature, prioritizing isotopes as strategic for Ontario. And Minister Smith, whether it's the project at Darlington that Leslie was talking about, the work we've done on Unit 7, when Todd Smith was the Minister of Energy, he prioritized this. I also want to recognize Pam Damoff. And again, I'm going to get in trouble. I could go around everybody in the room. And by the way, this is not counting against my 10 minutes, just to be clear. But Pam Damoff, I think Jenna talked about this, but the introduction of Canada's medical isotope ecosystem was a real foundational pivot for our industry and for what we're doing here today. And Pam really spearheaded that. And look at where we are. Look at where we are today. Now we're coming for more money, just to be clear. But in fairness, I don't think the federal government's afraid of that. They've been actually pulling us in that direction. And then finally, I want to thank the staff. If all four of them could stand up for the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council: Evan, Melody, Marwa, and Amanda. Thank you for your leadership. So I have a couple of minutes of items I really just want to set the stage with for a couple of minutes. And there's really three key items in the document that is at the table. So we're going to roll that out today. You are part of a communications exercise. That's okay, by the way, because we really want to launch today's report out there, and we need your help broadcasting it. We did our first isotopes report in 2023, and we've promised every 2 years to continue to push it out. Why it's particularly important for Canada is because of the work that the federal government is doing related to Canada's nuclear strategy. And having this integrated in Canada's nuclear strategy is going to be absolutely critical. But there's three key takeaways in that report that I want to leave with you today. And I'm going to simplify them, and then we're going to talk about them more on the panel. The first is doubling production by 2030. I'm going to let you in on a dirty little secret. When we said we were going to have an ambition to double by 2030, we had no idea how the hell we were going to do it. But we did know this, and that is that the demand for isotopes around the world by 2030 was going to double. And that if there was any country in the world that would be able to step up and double that production, it was Canada. With our CANDU reactors, I see our friends from Atkins Realis here, with our cyclotrons, with all of the network that's been shared. If it was going to be anywhere, it was Canada. And I think what you're seeing 2 years later, and you'll hear this from Minister Lecce as well, it's not just an ambition. We have a clear plan to double isotope production by 2030. Double short-lived medical isotopes by 2030. I saw John D'Angelo from Kinetrix in here. Double stable isotope production by 2030. And when it comes to our cobalt capacity, through Bruce, soon to be Darlington, and really great news on the Pickering B refurbishment, will effectively double the operating life years of cobalt production into the 2060s and 70s. So I think you should give yourselves all a round of applause for making that happen. That is important. I want to just talk for a minute on the second. I want to just talk. The second area I want to leave you with is all of these aspirations are great, but nothing happens unless people invest and people spend money. And this is where, and I thought Jenna, she could have given the speech because I thought she rolled it out really well, is it's government's role to create the environment for investment. But it's also government's role to step in and sometimes and catalyze and trigger that investment. And through the work of the Canadian medical isotope ecosystem, stable policy from the provincial level, the areas that have been advanced in Ottawa, this is just a snapshot of the investment that has occurred in our sector since 2023. It's absolutely incredible. And it's not all government money. It's private investment. It's people going to financial institutions. And this is sustainable. And so while we sometimes talk about these items in aggregate, when you put together the investment in this sector, it's not only a great contribution in terms of helping battle cancer, stand up for Canada, and assert ourselves on the international stage, it's also putting Canadians to work. It's hiring young people, it's building facilities. And that's the second key point I want to leave you with. And then the final area, and this is one that I don't think we talk about enough. And it sounds like a bit of a downer, but it's not a downer, it's a call to action. And I just want to put something in perspective for everybody in this room. You know, we are so grateful as Canadians that we can talk about amazing access to cancer diagnosis and treatment in areas just up the street on University Avenue or in communities. And do we have a long way to go to improve that? Of course we do. But I just want to share a broader perspective with you as not a Canadian, but just as a human being on planet Earth. A few weeks ago, we celebrated 74 years since the first cobalt beam therapy in London, Ontario. Actually, an MPP in the legislature got up and recognized that 74th anniversary. And you know, we were so proud as Canadians that we did that in Canada 74 years ago, and we should have been. And in fact, they made a stamp. Does anybody use stamps anymore? I don't know if that's a good joke with everything going on, but the point is, when we were proud as Canadians, we were really proud of that. We made a stamp. But I want to share, and I would just, Rebecca will talk about this on our panel. We recently had the opportunity to participate in a panel in Tunisia, Africa. They didn't let me travel. I had to videotape in from. But it was all about access to cancer diagnosis and treatment in Africa and other countries that don't have the same kind of healthcare system that we have here. And what if I told you that nearly half the world's population today does not have access to that cancer treatment we were so proud of in Canada 74 years ago? That's not right. Now, you know, I always say to my daughter, hey, I want to save the world every day. But as Canadians, we need to think about that. And I think by providing reliable, low-cost supply of isotopes, we have an ability to influence that on the global stage. And Melody in particular, who I really want to give her credit for her leadership, the CNIC, since 2003, we have partnered with the International Atomic Energy Agency, Raise a Hope campaign. By the way, we came up with Isotopes for Hope before they came up with that name, just to be clear. But their mission is to provide access to life-saving medical isotopes to those countries in the world that don't have it. And so a key focus of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council is mobilizing the capabilities we take for granted in Canada and trying to knowledge transfer that very, very quickly to these other countries. And I know we're in an era where it's not popular to talk about, what we're doing to help others. That's what's different about Canada. We don't shy away from saying we have a role to play in helping others in the world. And we're not going to shy away from that as an Isotope Council. So I want to, again, thank you for being here. And I will now pass it over and we will kick off the panel in a couple minutes. Thanks again.
Thanks, James. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Dominic Nowak, past president of the Ontario Medical Association and department head, family and community medicine at Women's College Hospital, and Dr. Rebecca Wong, radiation oncologist, Princess Margaret Cancer Centre, professor, Department of Radiation Oncology at the University of Toronto. They're going to join James for a candid conversation. Let's give them a warm round of applause.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Okay, well, I've been looking forward to this all week, but in particular all day today, because we have two individuals here who I really think their perspective is going to be important, because I think what they're going to do is really humanize this whole conversation. And I want to start with you, Rebecca. You were recently in Tunisia. Can you maybe just share with everybody and give a bit of a perspective on what the discussion was at that conference, and talk about the access to medical isotopes in some of these other countries and continents around the world?
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me. It was indeed a privilege to be part of the conference. It's called AORTIC, African Organization of Research and Training in Cancer. And to me, it's the biggest conference in that part of the world that brings together not just Africans, but people interested in the health and a future of the population across the world to participate. And there were over 1,000 people there. And I've had the privilege to work with many of my colleagues at the ground level to train their trainees, as a way to improve quality. And as you mentioned earlier, James, half of the world in developing countries do not have access to radiotherapy treatments. And talk about molecular imaging and therapy, that is non-existent, even as a diagnosis, never mind about therapy in most parts of the world. We talk about how to improve access in North America, in Europe, as it is a growing space. How do we get the patient out from here to Thunder Bay? But in Africa, even having the tests to diagnose these tracers that may indicate that the patient is suitable for these treatments does not exist. Now, I have the privilege to know that a lot of these colleagues, they are super talented. For example, in Ethiopia, they're at the top of the class and they get to go into medicine. So they actually have great brain power to be able to accelerate growth, to leapfrog, to get to closer to where we are and perhaps in par with where we are, but they need support and assistance. So specifically the session that you mentioned is addressing closing the gap of theranostics in low and middle income countries. So you were there in spirit with your video. IAEA, May Abdul Wahab, who's in charge of all the radiotherapies globally and quality of it, she was there as well on Syndium Foundation that has actually a global movement to provide access to theranostics in places that people that really need it, and my medical director, Dr. Keith Stewart. So it was a really great conversation as to what Canada ideas from what Canada has done to be able to narrow the gap, that as an example for them, and also the type of collaboration that can be built. And I want to say that one last thing is that a little bit of it is not translating what the amount of resources that we need to build our capability here. A little bit of resource in that environment can go a long way to close that gap. So it's not as daunting as it sounds, and it's certainly possible with everybody's help.
That's great. And for those of you that there's a QR code on the table, I do have an iPad here connected to questions. And I have a rule at Bruce Power in every presentation I do. I don't leave the room unless I get 3 questions. So if you want to get onto your next meeting, somebody's got to ask a question. Okay, so I'll be watching for those on the iPad. And no funny jokes over to me, because I will read whatever you put on that iPad in front of everybody. So Dr. Nowak, we've met through the new ministers panel, and you have a long and distinguished career in the healthcare space and are a former president and CEO of the Ontario Medical Association. From a broader sort of Ontario perspective, can you just talk about sort of the clinical component here of what you see in terms of cancer treatment, cancer diagnosis in Ontario, and really paint a picture for people in terms of how we have continued to advance as a province in this space?
Yeah, look, so I bring a lens of, I like to bring optimism into conversations around the healthcare system, because a lot of people see our Canadian healthcare system and see gap. They see just the realism part of optimism, right? They see people who can't find a family doctor. They see people leaving emergency rooms before they actually get treatment and so on. But optimism is realism and hope. And for me, optimism means looking at where are we doing well as well, and what are the glimmers. And I would say cancer care, and especially under the leadership of remarkable scientists, physicians like Dr. Rebecca Wong, who are, by the way, leaders not just in Canada, But across the world, I think that deserves a round of applause.
Absolutely.
Those are glimmers for our system, right? Glimmers that in Canada, we can do at least parts of our healthcare system well. We're doing it well. We have a lot of stuff to work on, of course, but there are strengths that we already have. And how do we build on those strengths and continue to grow and develop that capacity for patients, but then also for the rest of the world? So that's my lens. It's actually a lens of finding those strengths in Canada and building on those strengths, and medical isotopes, such a beautiful example of where we have incredible leaders, technology here that's leading the world, and we have an opportunity to continue to be ambitious around medical isotopes in Canada across the board.
That's great. And Rebecca, over to you. One of the terms we use a lot these days is theranostics. I tried to explain it in my Cole's Notes version. But if you could just take a couple of minutes and really walk through theranostics for everybody in the room, to really, just so folks can get an appreciation of this field and really how much of a game changer it is in terms of cancer treatment.
Yes, theranostics is a play on words, combining therapy and diagnosis into one word, because it's also putting these two together into one tracer, one molecule, complex molecule. So the basic structure of a radiopharmaceutical in the space of radiotheranostics is that you have a radioisotope, and we'll come back to how you pick those, and then there's a linker and then a ligand. The ligand is carefully selected so that it can identify the abnormal markers that are on cells. So with this purpose-built designer drug with an isotope attached to a linker, when we inject it into a patient, it will stick itself around the abnormal cells that have these targets that we are aiming to injure and destroy, if you like. Back to the concept of disease and personalized medicine. Breast cancer and all the cancers that we are aware of is not just one cancer. They have many different patterns based on the genetic composition and the molecular characteristics. And we are, thanks to a lot of the work with scientists and oncologists in the front line, there's a plethora of targets that we are aware of and is discovering. And it is within the realm of possibility that we can identify these markers, identify the ligand that will find them, and create the designer drug that will target them. So that's basically the concept of radiopharmaceutical injuring cancers. And the other piece is a diagnosis. You can use the same ligand instead of having an isotope that is strong enough that can injure the cell and kill it. You can put a gentler isotope, but it brightens up, and you can see it on a PET scan or a SPECT scan, and that will tell you that the patient have these cells and how much they have and where they are, so that you can diagnose better and pick your treatments better. So that's a whole concept of radiotheranostics. And the diagnosis part is not just limited to cancer. In a lot of other space, in cardiovascular, in brain health, mental health, these tracers can improve our ability to detect them. So cancer is obviously important space to tackle, but the application of these radiopharmaceuticals is potentially endless.
Well, that's great, Rebecca. And as Ontarians and Canadians, we can be proud of two institutions just right in the vicinity of this venue that are leaders in this space. Rebecca representing UHN. And is my friend Dr. Segal, is he still here? He probably got called in, but Sunnybrook is also, between UHN and Sunnybrook, when you put that capability together on an international stage, it is absolutely incredible the horsepower we have here. And when people think of theranostics, They think of Canada, which is incredible.
And can I just say,
Please.
to ground this conversation for folks who haven't been to medical school,
I wanted to, they didn't let me in. So
You're an honorary
okay,
physician.
thank you. Thank you.
So when I was going through medical school, which wasn't that long ago, this was a dream, right? So just to really underline that we're living in the future of cancer diagnosis, treatment. This is our strength in Canada, thanks to the leadership, the amazing leaders that we have here, and let's seize the opportunity and build on that for us and for the world.
Great, so we've got 3 questions, so everybody's going to be able to get to your afternoon after this session is done. So the one that has the leading votes is, the question is from Anonymous. You don't have the funny mask on, do you? Does anybody know what I'm talking about there? Sorry. Okay, maybe it's just not funny. We produce medical isotopes in Canada. What percentage of the medications produced with these isotopes are used here in Canada at our hospitals? I'm happy to take a first stab at that one. And so it really, I think it's a pretty broad question. I think it really depends on the type of treatment we're talking about. And this is an area in terms of quantifying our commitment to double isotopes that we've had a little bit of a challenge with, because not all isotopes are created equally. But I can give you 3 concrete examples that I think hopefully will answer the question and paint a picture. The first is if you are getting a Pluvicto treatment in Ontario for prostate cancer, there's a 70 to 80% chance that your lutetium is coming from here in Canada and Ontario, from Bruce or from our friends at Ontario Power Generation. So that's one example. If you are looking at, I mentioned Dr. Segal earlier from Sunnybrook, if you are a patient getting a gamma knife treatment for a brain tumor, where a gamma knife is really trying to target a brain tumor without surgical intervention, again, 70 to 80% of the HSA cobalt that powers that technology comes from actually the Bruce B units at Bruce Power. And I know our friends from Nordion are there. If you look at molybdenum-99, again, a diagnostic isotope, Ontario Power Generation is going to be the largest commercial provider of that with their facility at Darlington. So it's tough to say a specific kind of overall percentage, but when you break I see Karen here, if you're getting an iodine treatment, it's coming from McMaster University, at least I'd bet it is. And so it's not insignificant in terms of that space. So move on to the next question, and this one, Rebecca, I'll pass to you. What are some professions that younger generations can pursue to enter the nuclear isotope space?
I think that is a growing space, especially with all the contribution within this room to strengthen the isotope ecosystem. I think today, in addition to in the production side, all the engineers and technicians that James, you're much better in describing, in the healthcare system, this type of treatment and diagnosis is predominantly in the nuclear medicine space, but now increasingly in the oncology space. So to name a few disciplines, there are people who need to handle the radioisotopes, so these are predominantly nuclear medicine technologists, and then there are physicists who are involved in calibrating the machine, understanding the emissions, etc., radiation safety officers, there are physicians, engineers, all of these disciplines are closely working together to make treatment delivery possible. And I would hasten to add that that amount of collaboration is, I work in radiation oncology, and then we need a lot of collaboration. And in this space, it requires even more collaboration for it to be successful and given with high quality. And as we grow in the need and also the expertise in innovation, young people have lots of opportunities to go into this space to build the vision that we're aiming for.
And Rebecca, there is I think you're spot on as usual, and on the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council website, there's actually a workforce report that we conducted, I think it was 18 months ago, Melody, if I've got my timing right, and it was exactly on this space. What are some of the emerging careers in this space? What are some of the areas we need to focus on in terms of post-secondary institutions? And what I would say is if you're a young person, these are not only very rewarding jobs, clearly, because of what they do to help people and families and fellow community members, but they're also good, well-paid, long-term, secure jobs. And we have many institutions across the province, whether it's in the university sector with McMaster, whether it's through the college system in Ontario, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in this topic to look at that report. And this is an amazing field to encourage our young people to be in, not only for a good job, but most importantly to make a difference.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
I think that we are leading the world, but we must not be complacent because the rest of the world is poaching our people.
Yeah.
So we need to strengthen it and keep our talent here so we can grow better and serve our patients and help the world.
So, Dominic, I think this next question is a good one for you because I think you have a broader perspective on this from also as your time as President and CEO of the OMA. And the question is, the biggest challenge in medical, is the biggest challenge in medical isotopes scientific, economic, or political, and why? That's an easy one. You got half an hour on that one.
I thought you said the tough questions go to Dr. Wong. So it's a combination, obviously. And I'll give you an example of where I see such big opportunity. We're very fittingly at the Economic Club right now. And I think of the enormous potential for economic development across rural, remote, northern Ontario, across those communities in Canada. I see some of our smaller community mayors as well. Mayor Trevor from Goderich, a big supporter of a strong healthcare system and a strong workforce. And as I visit those communities, we know that we hear from families who they have a cancer diagnosis and they need to drop their entire lives and move to one of the big centers, move to Toronto for months sometimes to get treatment. And the reality is there's such an enormous opportunity for economic development across Ontario, across Canada, outside of the big centers, and to give people a reliable source of cancer care across the board, right? So that they don't have to leave their families, leave their supports for so long just to get care. So that's one example of where this is really not just a scientific problem. We have some of the brightest minds in Canada working on this, but also a political, a healthcare, a distribution challenge, and so on. And that's why I'm so happy to see some of our remarkable mayors from across Ontario here in this room today.
Well, and I think it's an excellent point. And Mayor Boddy here also from Owen Sound, and Mayor Boddy will remember this, but I remember a number of years ago when the Owen Sound Hospital was looking to expand their cancer care wing, and they came and they met with Bruce Power, and we have a sponsorship program, and the way that sponsorship program works is I say yes to all the yeses, and John Peevers says no. That's how it works at Bruce Power, but we said yes to this one, of course. But in the presentation, the CEO at the time of Grey Bruce Health Services gave us the statistic, and I'll always remember it, and it was about it was as high as 30% in some cases, people who were diagnosed with cancer had access to a publicly funded treatment in an urban center, and because of economic conditions, were not able to either get to an urban center, take the time off work, and a lot of people either didn't pursue the treatment or finish the treatment. So it is a real issue. And the other thing I would also say, and Melody and the team at the CNIC put a really good call out in the report on this, is one of the challenges we have in healthcare is costs are going up exponentially. They are. Healthcare is costing more, and that's not going to change. So one of the components that we talked about in the report was how not only are some of these treatments better for patients, but they are actually more cost effective for the health system. So if a patient can have access to, for example, a gamma knife treatment at Sunnybrook, and a brain tumor can be treated as opposed to surgical intervention, and again, it's not in every case, but in some cases, what do we think is lower cost for the healthcare system? Brain surgery or gamma knife? And so, but what's most important, it's a better outcome for the patient as well. So that's really the opportunity for us, is we have to find a way to actually bring healthcare costs down. And how do we do that in a way where we improve patient outcomes and experiences?
Yeah, and I'll underline that again. We know that we want to make a strong Canadian healthcare system sustainable.
That's right.
Not just for right now, but for decades to come. And a part of that is how we invest in primary care, in public health, but also a big part of it is how we invest in early diagnosis and more personalized, targeted treatments. The therapies that we were just sharing right now were a vision just a few years ago when I was going through medical school that now are a reality thanks to the leaders, including one we have on stage here today. And that's going to make healthcare more sustainable, because it'll lead to earlier detection, more precise therapy, people back to their families, but also to the workforce sooner, and it'll be good all around, not just for healthcare system, but for economy and for Canada.
So final question. This is not in the prepared questions, so it's a curveball, but you both love curveballs. So clearly that document is very focused on public policy, right? We're trying to set a public policy dynamic, working with our friends at Life Sciences Ontario. And I believe on this file, and Jenna and Todd and Bill, I think in the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, and in the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, we have two really good champions on what we need to do as Canada and Ontario next. I really believe that. If you could give Doug Ford and Mark Carney a soundbite of advice on what, not on everything, guys, on how they should think about isotopes for hope, what would it be?
I'm not the one to give them advice, but here, I would say
you probably are.
Continued ambition.
Yeah.
Right, continued ambition. We know that we've led for decades in medical isotopes. James, you shared the example of London being the first treatment with cobalt-60 in a cancer patient, and one of the doctors there. Anyone from London here or have a connection to London? Yeah, a round of applause for leadership coming from London. But there's so much since then, and continued ambition is how we sustain that place in our healthcare system, make it better for patients all across Ontario and Canada, and then also serve the world, right? Because so many people don't have that standard that we now had many decades ago. And there's a role that we have to play in making that realistic cancer care a reality across the world.
Well said.
I would say that having set the vision and enunciate, as the report has done and all the things that have been said today, enunciate the type of metrics that we're looking for, and following it through so that we are working together to achieve the vision that has been set. I think it's the best thing that we can do, avoiding detractions, pulling away from each other, but working together under this vision of improving radioisotope accessibility in the healthcare system and helping improve patient outcomes, I think will put us into the best place possible going forward.
Can I have a top up to, and do you want
Absolutely.
I want to throw James some love here, because I would say that you're role modeling this so beautifully, and role modeling, round of applause. And I think of the work that you've led nationally and also in Ontario, and putting in the right people in the rooms, bringing in healthcare, the scientists, industry, government, all working together, woven together, all swimming in the same direction. That's no accident, and it works like magic, right, to actually make continued ambition realistic. So big kudos to that, and that's really what I would say is the advice. Do exactly what would James do?
Well, there you go. Well, do I get to answer my own question? Is that allowed?
Yes, please.
I always say you never ask a question you don't know the answer to, right? So, but you always offer a perspective in a way that I would never have thought about, and I like where you're coming from. My advice is that sometimes I think in the world of social media, in the environment we operate now in as a democracy, and we're proud to be a democracy, we are overly consumed by risk and people telling us what we can't do or shouldn't do or what is wrong. And that we need to find issues that people are unified on. And I believe that medical isotopes are a unifying issue, not only in Canada, but around the world. When I think about the things that make Canada great, there's a whole list of them. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is the role we used to play as peacekeepers around the world. Again, it was a significant area, but it wasn't hundreds of billions of dollars. And I think isotopes fit into that space. How can we be very, very bold on unifying issues and make sure we don't fall into the trap of the glass half empty? Because if we continue, and I was at a recent speech by Prime Minister Carney at the Canadian Club, and he was being interviewed. By the way, I didn't think the interview was that fair, to be frank. I'm just being honest with you. And because the interview was all focused on all these glass half full pieces. And the Prime Minister actually said, I'm done talking about this. We as Canadians need to step up. Or a recent example with Premier Ford at the Empire Club talking about how we need to be very assertive in terms of the challenges we have. And I think we have leaders that really have that in them, but we got to have their back. Doesn't matter what political party you support, there's only one Prime Minister of Canada at a time and one Premier of Ontario at a time. And if we don't have their back, they have an impossible job ahead of them. So with that, I would now like to I'm way over time. You guys are never going to invite me back. But I would now like to introduce a video from Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, Stephen Lecce. Minister Lecce and Dominic, Rebecca, and I are on a panel. A number of members are that the minister is formed that is being led by the CNIC. And it's really around providing the government recommendations in Ontario by the middle part of next year on what are some of the next steps we need to do from a provincial perspective. And a lot of credit to Ontario because we can have the national government engaged, but what's also going to be really important is all of our provincial jurisdictions, because healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction, as is energy, and there's a very strong link between the two. So I'd like to now play the message from Minister Lecce, who's at an event with the Premier right now. Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. See, I messed it up.
It's an honor to be joining you today as Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, and I am very much with you in spirit as we celebrate the absolutely fabulous work that is being done by NICO. This is the task force I established, led by and chaired by James Skoniak, who's with us today, really to profile the ambition we have as a province to synergize between medical science and nuclear science to deliver the benefit of saving lives. And I think this is a legacy we can be proud of in Ontario. We already are a global leader in this space, but we have an ambition to scale, to actually double production by 2030. And the team in place, the leaders that have been assembled, eminent Canadians, leaders from science, medicine, industry, energy, technology. It is the dream team of Canada that's been established with one aim, which is double the production, increase commercialization, help support the development of new interventions and radiopharmaceuticals that can and will save lives. Because this year, like every year, almost 250,000 Canadians will have the devastating news of a cancer diagnosis. And as I mentioned to you all, this is something that personally hits home for me too. So I wanted to come and add my voice to say thank you to the leaders at NICO, to the entire nuclear supply chain for being a value-added member and leader in a world where we get rid of cancer, of disease, and give hope to so many. So I wanted to come and say thank you. I wanted to affirm my full support for the task force, for the vision, and for the outcome, which is a massive increase of generation of nuclear power and the harvesting of medical isotopes for good. One quick final thought, just to put this idea into action. This year, banner year, we announced a plan to expand medical isotope production. Lutetium-177 is being developed at Bruce, an incredible achievement in partnership with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We also announced that at McMaster University, that has a micro-nuclear reactor, has had one for almost a generation now, that we would fund the 24/7 production of their medical isotope program, which is helping to save almost 100,000 men, eradicating cancer specific to prostate. No matter who you are, where you look, this is going to help save lives. So I came to say thank you, and I wish you all a very positive afternoon.
Absolutely. And our final speaker is Rachel Stack, and I just want to embarrass Rachel a little bit if that's okay.
Great.
So I get to talk about all the stuff we do at Bruce Power. Rachel's the one that makes it happen with Isogen and Nordion and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So if there's any tough questions on what we're doing at Bruce Power, it goes to Rachel. And she's also a counselor in the municipality of Saugeen Shores. So if you live in Saugeen Shores and you're upset about your property taxes, Rachel can also help you with that as well. So Rachel, over to you.
Okay, hard to follow up with that. Just remember, elections are in October 2026. So if you're in Saugeen Shores, vote Councillor Stack. So in all seriousness, I know I'm standing in between you and the rest of your day and the weekend, so I'll try to be brief. First, I just wanted to thank the panel for providing such important insights on the benefits that isotopes bring to both our provincial and national healthcare systems. I know it's important for patients every day. As many of you have already noted, cancer is something important to all of us. And from personal experience, I have been deeply affected by cancer. My mother has stage 4. It's important I say non-smoker. She thinks that's very important, lung cancer. So she relied on PET scans to diagnose her. So I think this is important to me. And I really can't emphasize enough how important it is that we're working as a nation to make sure that we can do our best to treat and eradicate cancer. So I think that's really important and something we should recognize. I also think, I reflect on my professional experience at Bruce Power, and I started in the isotopes world back in 2019 when we started the lutetium-177 arrangement. So I think it's been really important and interesting to see that grow. And more recently, I've had the opportunity to come back into isotopes to work with our partners, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, to work on a deal that, when complete, will really help accelerate economic reconciliation in our region, and something that we think is really important and something that isotopes really allowed us to do. So I think from a personal and Bruce Power perspective, it's really important to recognize the value that this industry has played in our region, and something I'm very proud to be part of. I'd like to leave the audience with a further message just of hope and support for this industry and the role Canada has played in recognizing how important this industry is for healthcare and the role we can play in it, and just how it represents Canada's innovative potential. I think we often speak about some of the innovation gaps in Canada, so I think it's really important to recognize that isotopes is really a symbol of our innovation. Particularly that we've managed to successfully leverage both research and commercial reactors to drive the isotope industry forward in Canada. And I think that's really thanks to a very skilled workforce across the supply chain, recognizing the opportunities for young people as well to work in the nuclear industry, whether it's in the generation of electricity that goes to help irradiate the isotopes or into the production and delivery of isotope care across the country. I think it's something we really need to take a moment and recognize. So I'd like to leave you with that, the hope for our future, and thank everyone for coming, and thank you for letting me be part of this today.
So just a big final thank you to James, Dr. Dominic, and Dr. Rebecca. You can exit the stage. And on behalf of everybody at the Economic Club of Canada, a big final thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with us. Thank you to our friends at the CNIC for helping shape today's event. And a final thank you to all of our sponsors, Bruce Power, Laurentis Energy Partners, Can-Do, and Novartis for your support on today's luncheon. Now, please mark your calendars for our upcoming ECC events. On December the 2nd, we are welcoming the interim CEO of Shoppers Drug Mart, David Markell, as he discusses access to primary care in Canada. And on January the 7th, we have our big marquee Economic Outlook Breakfast. If you're not familiar with this event, we host it every single year. We've got the 6 chief economists from the big 6 banks as they unpack their predictions for the year. This event sells out every year. You don't want to miss it, so you can find registration information on the Economic Club's website. Safe travels home, and we'll see you next time.